is that it's rated in terms of the teacher's perspective, right? And I think that's the main reason why I kept it that way. I could have modified it, but I think it's useful to look for the lab through that perspective. Right. Now, the lab is about diagnostic problems. So once you start the lab, you basically start from a healthy system state, and then you introduce configuration errors, or basically you misconfigure the system, and then you try to diagnose the problem based on the logs. Right, that's the first one. There's a second way to diagnose the problem, and that's actually investigating the packet flow. Right? I think for now, you just need to investigate the logs and just take note of what you see and how you can interpret the logs, right? So basically, the logs will see something, and then you have to try to include what. Well, you already know what the problem is. And then you have to try to include what exactly is being said. Right? That's pretty much what it is. So that will take, assuming that you start the lab, that will only take maybe about 10 to 15 minutes to go through. Because it's really, I leave it up to you all, right? I'm not going to tell you exactly how to misconfigure your system, right? So based on the previous labs, they would have a series of steps that you have to go through, right? Like, for example, ensure that this parameter is this, or ensure that the two parameters are the same, right? Or look at this file and see, okay, so what is the IP address here? Make sure the IP address is the same as this. So that's areas where you can target where you can change that value to something that's wrong, right? So once you start the lab and you can get data through, you just misconfigure your system and then you get something incorrect. Now before you do that, what you could also do to ensure that you don't mess up your environment, you could save a snapshot, right? You can save a snapshot of your environment. So if you do something wrong and you don't know how to fix it, you can just revert, right? Does everyone know how to create snapshots of your system using VirtualBox? If you do not know, I can show you.
I believe there is a button for snapshot.
Sorry?
There is a button to snapshot, I think. I believe in.
Yeah, I think you have to. Okay, so let me go through it. I can actually show you. Now, I have VirtualBox. Oh, yeah, I have it already, right? So, if you go through here, right? These, if you right click, you usually have something like a snapshot or something like that. Where is it? How do we get a snapshot? There's usually a snapshot somewhere. If you remember how to get this. I remember, yeah, right. So if you go this, that's it here, and you go to snapshots, you can then select it, right, and then you can create a snapshot for the virtual machine, right? So the thing is, you can create a set of snapshots. So like you can have snapshot A, and then from snapshot A, you can have a second snapshot, right? And then you can even have branches of snapshots. So for example, let's say you have snapshot A and you have snapshot B. Now from A, you can also have a snapshot to A1, for example, or A2. So you can go through a tree, like set of snapshots. So like you have A1 and you go to A. Then from A, you may have to go, well, from A you can go to B. But you cannot go from A1 to B, right? You have to go through the tree. Because the way the snapshot works is by capturing basically the state of your system as a difference, right? and then from that difference, it will function like normal. So when you want to reverse, you just check the difference from the current frozen set of states, right? So it cannot just jump to a different tree, right? It has to go through the set of differences until you get to the point that you want. But usually for this class, you will not need many snapshots, just maybe one. So whenever you change something, you just go back to the original set. Right. Now, I will go through the lab very briefly. So, I think let's see, I should have seen this. So okay, we have this, okay, so it's topic 8, right? I did not rename the. Normally I rename it into P to L. So P is usually your set of slides, and L are the labs, right? So in this case, I just kept this topic. I will go through it and change it afterwards. But the material worksheet. So this is the main purpose of this lab, right? So we want to be able to diagnose problems, right? It's a very important skill because most likely when you do something for the first time, you'll almost never work out properly, right? And it's actually even scarier when it works out properly because if it works properly in the first try, sometimes it's something that went wrong, but it didn't actually go wrong when it should have gone wrong. So you may be left with a false sense of security, right? That's why it's still important to read the diagnostic because yes, it works, but maybe there's a diagnostic log somewhere that flashes yellow and you didn't really realize it until you start going deeper into your configurations, and then all of a sudden it just breaks and you don't know why. Okay, so you have this line, right? Pretty self-explanatory, right? Don't need to go too much depth on that. And of course we have our rows. So those are the rows that we investigated in the previous labs. Right? Now, these are the questions that we will ask. So for now, we're only investigating our registration, right, or authentication. So we need to find out why we're not getting the results that we want. Okay. And then to do that, we need to map the log to the function that's misbehaving. And then we need to practice how to fix it. Right. Now, for this section, you need some level of network expertise, network configuration, but you need to understand how computer networks function, right? So you need some basic IT knowledge here, but that's not very difficult to find in this day and age, right? It's fine to use AI or these LMMs to help you to understand, but you should always regard what they see as like a teacher in a sense. Maybe these days it's very likely to be correct, but if they give you the answer, chances are that you're going to forget it if you don't really understand what's going on in the background, right? So always try to teach yourself, right? So even if you get the answer the first time, you have to go back and ask yourself what is the problem and whether you can answer the question yourself. So the reason why this lab is important is that once you start adding extra pieces of modules to your network, the complexity rate gets higher, right? And whenever you have more things in your network, each thing can be a point of failure. So it's very important to understand where in your network is the problem coming from, right? So you need to basically decompose your network and find out the health status of each area. And you can only do that by investigating the logs and also by actively tracing the packets through your network. Right. So the easiest way, at least the first line of defense for proper configuration is by examining your logs. Right. Now, at the end of the lab, it's useful to go through the set of questions that are posed. Right. So it helps you to check whether or not you really understand the concept. Right. So yes, you get proper results. You know your data is flowing through your network. You see maybe a green light on your application, but do you know why? Do you know what is happening in your network? Right. So there's a difference between an end user and an engineer or developer. Right. So yes, it works. The end user only cares about whether it works or not, right? Whether he gets the requirements met or not. But the designer or the engineer has to know why, or whether that's good, or maybe what are the future problems that you can get. So maybe, don't get me wrong, being an end user might be fine, because in life you need to prioritize where to put most of your attention, right? But you have to ask yourself, why are you taking this class, right? I bet you only just take this class just to be able to buy a 5G phone and know whether it's working properly or not, right? You want to be able to design your own networks, right? So it's up to you to decide what level of complexity that you need to understand. Right? And if you have any questions, you can always ask us. Right? I'm not an expert. I'm just here. Part of my purpose here is to help disseminate. I want to distribute, but disseminate the information, right? And to be like an interface between the knowledge and you, right? So for the actual lab, it's very, very short, right? So I want to make it more fleshed out in the future, but I think for now this is good enough. Okay, so it gives you the purpose, it tells you why it matters, and it gives you the problem free. Very rarely will you get that in an actual problem, right? So in an actual problem, all you will have is usually the problem. It's not working, and then you need to find out why, right? It's not going to frame the problem for you. That's for you to do that's your task. How can you find a real problem and then frame it in a way that you could analyze and solve, right? So this lab is important because it kind of gives you that picture, right? Now you have the key roles. So for your free 5GC core is basically 5G core, right? So whatever you see in the 5G core in the documentation, you find that in, I would say, every other 5G framework, because it's a standard, right? So if it's in one, it should be all. You don't have frameworks that, how should I say, don't meet the specifications, otherwise it will be non-compliant. And no one will want to adopt it because very likely what you will have is that you will not be able to port your problems from one framework to the next, or you will not be able to understand why the problem is occurring because your frameworks don't match the specifications. That's why you have specifications. Because the specifications arises as a solution to problems that the framework should solve. Right? So I want everyone to go through at least the two files, the field lab and the handout, and give me your feedback. Is it too short? Do you want more instructions? Tell me what you think, okay? You can do it after class, or you can send me something on Moodle to either myself or the professor. Okay? For the next set of labs, that will be the week after next week. It will be more fleshed out because we need to move from the single user element, the equipment, to the multi-user equipment scenarios, right? Then we want to transmit data from one UE to another UE, right? And then transfer, and then eventually you can transfer between networks, between core networks. So for example, you can have, let's see, you can have one student with a network, you can bridge that network and go to another network. So you can be like telecommunication company A, telecommunication company B, and you can transmit data. So you could have a scenario like that. Now I will actually a few papers talk about that scenario, and we'll go into that next. So for now, you could work on the labs. You will have enough time. I think it should only take maybe about 15 minutes, assuming that you already got your networks to work to begin with, right? If you didn't get your networks to work, then it will take much longer. Okay? So let us move on to where you could find the files. Now, if you go to Moodle, you will see a folder called L3. L3 or Lab 3? I think you're Lab 3. Lab 3 and reference materials, right? So, I still need to include two more files, right? So the two files would be like a summary of most of it will be a summary of these set of files except for the labs, right? And that will help you to be able to go through the reference material a lot easier because it will be somewhat like a summary guide. And generally you can use this for the rest of the course. So I'll give you a short preview of what I'm talking about. So this is study notes, detail. So in case you are interested in what I'm using, this is called Overleaf, right? I didn't make this, it's free. You can try it out. You can use this to create your LaTeX documents. You don't need to install LaTeX. Pretty convenient, right? Hey. So if you look on the right, this is the detail five-year self-study. So what I do, right? What I'm doing is that I scour the internet and based on what you told me last week, I searched for a couple of case studies and some papers. I found a few representative of those questions, solutions to those questions, and then I uploaded it to ChatGPT and Claude. So I helped ask to generate a set of summaries and ask for some refinements. I read it, read the back and forth until I got this stuff. Alright, so I will not claim this to be completely my book. This is mostly not my book. It's more like a summary. That's why I believe it's pretty correct. It's pretty correct because I went through it and then I also asked it in multiple passes. So it's a way to ensure, not ensure, but it's a way to significantly reduce the chances of these machines going wrong. making up nonsense information. So what you can do, right, is to after you ask him to generate a summary or a document, ask him to go through the document in reverse. Right? Ask him to go through the document in reverse. I call that being a back pass. So once it starts from the back, it's supposed to find information in the document itself that will answer the question. Right? That way it will be less likely to make something up. Because if it can't find the information, it cannot solve the problem. Right? The problem of hallucination is largely if it does something and it makes up something to be correct. But if the solution is to find something that is in the document, if it's not there, then it's already fine. It doesn't have to make up something. It's there or not. Right? So that helps a lot, but it still does not eliminate the chances of being incorrect. So another method is to use a different element. So if you use, for example, ChatGPT, you use something like Claude or maybe Gemini or something, and then you try to use multiple versions. So use one as a critic and one as an acting mind. That's how I think of it. So one makes the document, one checks the document. So because the way they behave is very different. It's very my theory, I'm being correct. My theory is that it's less likely to lie to itself, right? You can try that approach for yourself. That's see how it goes. Anyway, so this is the self-study notes, okay? And the objective of these notes was to try to summarize the documents in the folder, right? I also noticed it's still a work in progress because I did a second pass and there's some information that I need to include. So I will upload this. Don't get me wrong, it's still correct. There's no factual, as far as there's no factual inconsistencies here, but the problem is that it's not self-contained. So sometimes you may see acronym or abbreviation and it's not defined in the document itself. So it might be lost. So I'm going to make it more self-contained. Anyway, so you see they talk about a lot of elements of 5G, how it's structured, what problem it solves. You know, it even goes into certain risks. Like for example, if the 5G network is under attack, what's at risk? Certain things that might capture your interest, right? So it's only about 30 pages long. So it's not a long read. And it's very easy to read through. It doesn't ask you any complex questions. I would also like your feedback on this topic. Right. Now, this is the first one. The second one is the layered version. So the layered version is actually simpler. I think this one, it's similar to the detailed one, but it's more structured like brand, core, and application, right? So it's less about the references and more about the actual structure. Right? But I need to make it so that it's a bit easier to go through class. Hey, I'll upload those two files after class. Now, for the references, the most important one is actually something like a study guide or like a white paper. So the white paper is quite in depth. So the white paper is a deliverable by next generation mobile network. Yeah, so this is a white paper. Right, now the white paper goes through several elements of 5G. Right, and it goes through spectrum, what else? It goes to the requirements, goes through several concepts of 5G, including parts of the business too, right? Business models.
Right. So what's necessary for the business models to have, and like what requirements must 5G meet so the business owners will be very happy. Right. You can find that in that document. But as you can see, it's very dense. Right. It's very dense document. So that's one reason why I felt it was necessary to try to get that summarized guide. Right. And that's only one document. Right. So this is the study guide, and the second important set of papers are a few papers I found from this one. This is something else. This is a template for this one. So this one is from IEEE. It's just this seems to be how they call it, a conference paper. Nothing complex, just how you could build a 5G network using simple components. Not necessarily very cheap, but simple, yes. Alright. I won't go too much in depth on that one. That one is not as important as the other two. So this is another paper, and that paper is a real case implementation of the future 5G city. Right. So this paper was found from MDPI, right? So that's an open source journal, very I would say popular, but very popular, I would say very well known. The reason why I think well known, popular is not necessarily the same thing, right? It kind of overlaps, but I mean well known is more like reputable, right? So yeah, so this goes through this is a case study basically. Right, and there were several case studies that I went through. I think this one was from Italy. I can check the abstract. So this paper was written on. It does not see here. It does not see here. Strange. I'm not sure what country. I think I remember there were several in Italy, basically in Europe. But I'm not sure this one is Italy, right? So yeah, this is from Italy, right? And it goes through the concepts of 5G. Right? You could use this as I can use it to better understand how 5G is implemented in an actual.
This is too small.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is just. I'm not going to go through this in step by step, right? Because I don't think everyone wants to have me just, go through this. They want to see it for themselves, and like maybe break down whatever section that's of their interest, right? So I'm just going to go through this in general, where you could find it and what you could expect to learn from this, right? Now, so this is one of them, and there's another one. I think it's this one. Now this is another white paper. Now this paper, I believe, is probably going to be of more interest to everyone. So this paper is focuses more on the core, the 5G core, right? And this is from Telecommunication Engineering Center. It's from India, right? So this focuses more on the core. Right, and I think there's a comparison between 4G and 5G. I'm not sure, but yeah, you can see these certain graphics that can show you the difference in performance. And it talks about the cost. So you see, this diagram is very important, right? Almost every single reference, we'll refer back to this diagram. So I would suggest everyone to learn this diagram, right? Bend it into your brains. Yeah. Right, so it goes through certain elements of 5G, right? Including so this is something I want to focus on. So for example, this is a network slicing, right? So you have one user element, one user equipment, the other user equipment, right? And you can see the data connection passes in 2 different links, right? And you can see this is like almost like a copy of this. And it's IoT. So depending on the application, you can slice your network so that the data can be routed at different locations, and it can be done so that it's such that each equipment has a CEL. Right, so that you can partition your resources much better.
How about setting on the RAN?
The RAN settings?
Yeah, like the channels.
I don't think this document goes into the RAN settings, but I'm not sure. This one is more about the core.
Yeah, I know it's a call, but I'm just curious. Usually we don't have the hardware.
No, we have a simulator, so the simulator simulates the RAM.
No.
So whatever setting that we need to put in the RAM, we could put it in the simulator.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, it simulates the RAM. What it may not simulate is the actual physical layer. Right? So it may not simulate the propagation properties of the channel. So for example, if I'm in class and I'm on my phone and I go outside and I'm still on my phone, it doesn't simulate, it may not simulate how the physical channel quality will deteriorate, right? That's very important. But if you only care about the settings, for example, it might be more than enough, right? So I think I need to go through one more document, and then that will be it for my monologuing. Let me see. There's another document. Well, actually, this is more of a print screen from the free PG, is it called? What's the organization called again? Free GPP, right? Free GPP website. So you can find this information there, and it gives a very simple breakdown of the 5G structure, right? Again, you see the same diagram, but this one looks a bit better, actually. You would expect that because they are the people in charge of creating the standards, basically. Right, so if they don't have the best information, then who will? Now, there's some other concepts that we haven't gone too much detail yet. That is management, right? So, in addition to setting up the network, you have to manage the network. So, as the network is running, you need to change settings to keep the key performance indicators above your requirements, right? Or maybe to do some other functions that you traditionally might need someone to manually adjust, right? So 5G is very keen on automatic orchestration management. Right? And you can find more information on that site. And also, I think the study guide I do recall seeing that in the study guide, so you can also consult that too. Okay, so let me minimize everything and let me go back to Moodle. Sorry, Moodle. So about the midterm. Yeah, see everyone midterm, everybody midterm, what about that? Yes. So midterm, I haven't finalized the number of questions. But I can tell you the questions will be on materials in the lab, right? Sitting maybe like, how should I say? Maybe some acronym or something that, I mean, if you always see the acronym, you should know it. So I don't think the acronyms that we use will be too difficult to remember. Right? But I'm not telling you to learn all the acronyms because we only tell you about 4 or 5, right? Consistently. Okay. So there's that, and we will ask a few conceptual questions. For example, why you need 5G, right? Or maybe give a user case like, okay, so maybe this scenario is maybe there are this number of users and the users want to do something which emphasis of 5G will meet what they want to achieve, right? They want, for example, maybe I will say, okay, so the users want to transmit a lot of data. The users want to transmit a lot of data, what element of 5G will be more relevant to them, right? Or maybe I would say something like, okay, so we have a hospital, we have different medical equipment, and each of them have to meet some sort of specific requirement. What can 5G or what element of 5G allows for partitioning of the network? Right? Something like that. So it will not be questions where you'll be left scratching your head because we haven't taught it. Right? It should be something that you can intuitively know, but you might not remember the term. You may know like, oh yeah, it's something about partitioning, okay, maybe slice. So it means network slicing. Okay, something like that. So the number of questions will definitely will be about 25. At least 25 questions. And they will have a combination of multiple choice, true and false. I'm also thinking of adding some short answer questions. Add a few short answer questions. Maybe some open-ended questions. Just to, try and make it a bit different. Right? Instead of going to the exam and true and false and you fall asleep, maybe give us some spikes in it, and make you sweat a little bit more, right? But don't worry, it won't be like, I don't know anything to get 0. At least if you went through the course and you went through the lab, you should get about 80%. Easy. Right? That's what I think. Yeah, that's also, everyone just go through the material. Go through the lab.
For last week, for the last hour, we may get together with your team and start to discuss your kind of project and your create they can download there, but you may need to download your proposal and the reference articles. Moodle.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, like, so the final, the midterm.
Yeah.
So for the midterm, I mean
the proposal will be written out. So next week, just midterm. Next week is just midterm, so it's easier. Okay, so next week you will give a proposal about your current project. I want to make it easier. So next week I just focus on acceleration for return.
Yeah, so it will be material. I want to ask you to memorize the study guide. It'll be everything from this week and back. Right? That'll be the core, right, from this week and back. So I won't put too much emphasis on this week itself. Everything from maybe last to the beginning of that. Right, so material this week will be more on the more